Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Bomgaars, founder and CEO of EveryPig, the app that's helping veterinarians and production teams quicker recognize and respond to pig health challenges, lowering mortality rates and saving pig lives. Today, I've got the honor of talking with Dr. Brent Carmichael. Dr. Carmichael is Director of Production at RC Family Farms, an Orange City, Iowa-based pork production company. Dr. Carmichael is on the forefront of technology in the swine industry and has plenty of real-world experience dealing with the challenges that our industry has to present. Dr. Carmichael, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Chris, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it and look forward to our conversation today.
Did I miss anything from that introduction?
No.
Awesome. Well, look, we're excited to have a conversation with you here today. I get to talk to you fairly frequently, a lot of times over email. Not too often we record. In fact, I think this might be the first time. So really appreciate you being flexible and joining today. Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about your upbringing? How did you end up bringing your family to Orange City, Iowa? And how did you start working for RC Family Farms?
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. It's an interesting story, and I will try not to bore everyone to death with it. But essentially, I grew up in Northwest Iowa, not quite as far northwest as Orange City, but in the Alta area. Grew up on a small acreage, ended up going to Iowa State, studying veterinary medicine early on, but decided I didn't want to go to school that long. So I got a degree in agronomy, ended up working for Deere and Company corporate, did a lot of sales and marketing training in precision farming equipment. And as I joke with people, I had a midlife crisis around my late 20s and decided I did want to go to vet school. So it turns out I went to vet school and paid twice as much as I probably would have had I gone straight through. But, you know, the life experience was good. And so I didn't go into veterinary practice right away out of vet school. I had another opportunity present itself. So I was able to get some good experience working for a company in central Iowa. And when that kind of wrapped up, took an extended RV trip with my family, which I never thought we would do, but it was just kind of presented itself in life. And the kids were young enough and traveled around the southern part of the country for a couple of months and then decided I should get back to work. So I called an old buddy of mine from vet school, Dr. A.J. Smith, and he got me in contact with Dr. Dave Bomgaars, and had a virtual interview and did a video interview. And ironically enough for me, it was the first job I've ever taken where I didn't meet my boss until my very first day of work. I'd only talked to him on the phone or had a video conference call. So it was kind of a good transition into the technology world that I live in now as EveryPig and in a production with RC Family Farms. And so that's the very short version of a little bit of history of myself.
Thanks for sharing. I had some experience with Dr. A.J. Smith growing up as well. Heck of a football player, not a guy you wanted to see across the line. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about technology and also pork production, obviously. Before we jump into some of that in the specifics, you talked about how you started working and moved to Orange City. Why did you choose to be a veterinarian, and how did you end up in swine?
Yeah, also good questions. And I don't know that there's an exact answer. Veterinary medicine was one because I was interested in the biology of animals, working with animals growing up, working with neighboring farmers, raising pigs and cattle. So I was intrigued when I saw the veterinarian come out and do a necropsy and post pigs and be able to tell me what caused the illness or what caused death in that case when they posted the animal. So I was intrigued with that. And then when I decided to go back to vet school, it was a point in my life where, you know, we were looking to start a family. I didn't want to have to move a ton of times if I stayed in the corporate world. There's nothing wrong with that. But at that time, I didn't necessarily want to do that. So I thought, well, if I get be a veterinarian, work in a mixed animal practice, put down some roots somewhere in Iowa and go that route. And turns out, you know, I went to veterinary medicine, but didn't do the mixed animal practice route and ended up in Orange City through the contact and really got, when it came to swine, it was, you know, what could I do in Iowa that is obviously a big industry, a lot of intriguing aspects to it. I had done a couple of internships in vet school with Boehringer Ingelheim and the university, so I got a lot of exposure to really intelligent people in the PRRS field and learned a lot and sometimes felt inadequate in the intelligence side as we talked about that virus and that disease. And still I'm learning every day, but it was that part of learning about that disease and working with the people and learning that there was so much more out there in swine medicine other than just doing swine medicine work. And so when the opportunity came came available to come to RC Family Farms, use technology, use that in production. That's really what intrigued me. It was kind of all the, I would call the ancillary stuff around the edge of swine medicine versus just right in the middle of it. That was intriguing to me. The nice part about moving to Orange City, it's a very nice small community in Northwest Iowa. For those of you wondering, I am not Dutch, but hey, it's a great town. Everyone has treated us well, and we enjoy being in Orange City. That is not a sales pitch. It's just we really like it.
That's great. And it's interesting to hear kind of how things came full circle for you, right? Going to vet school with Dr. AJ Smith, growing up in Iowa, where obviously pork production is a huge, huge part of the economy. And I kind of chuckled when you mentioned PRRS, because knowing the bit I do about raising pigs in Northwest Iowa, PRRS has got to be on your radar about every day. So I'm sure you got a lot of experience in the field, where we could maybe talk about some of that a little later on. So speaking of PRRS, maybe a good segue. Can you talk us through, what you see as current industry challenges, and maybe some of the challenges that are unique to you or the company at RC Family Farms?
Yeah, I mean, the first challenge would be economics, and because I would be remiss by not mentioning that, and that's whether it's disease, commodities, futures markets, labor, cost of capital now with rising interest rates. And I am not an economist. I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Sorry for the old joke. So that is a big part of it. And so as it relates to us at RC, it's labor can be an issue, and we're blessed with a lot of contract labor here that are still involved on the farm. They may be a building owner, or they may be related to somebody that owns a building, or there's still a lot of family connection, but there's not as many people that want to take care of pigs, and frankly, some of the economics aren't great on the labor side. So you have to have scale, and you have to take care of a lot of pigs, and so you have to do that efficiently. That's not a knock on the people that do it. That's just the structure of the business at this time. And so really, as it relates for us, is how do we become more efficient? Or we've been doing this for a number of years with the platform. How do we improve our efficiency and take care of the pigs in the time they need to be taken care of with the amount of labor that we have? So those are the biggest challenges. The other thing, I cheated and looked at my notes a little bit, was wean to finish mortality and PRRS, but we can talk about that later. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, Chris.
No, I think that's a good time to transition into it, because you mentioned economics. Some of those things may be more in your control than others. Can't control what the futures market does. Can't control maybe what the corn basis is and what crop yields are, right? So you probably, I would imagine, spend a lot of your day focusing on some of those things that are in your control. Wean to finish mortality is a hot topic these days. It seems, according to a lot of statistics, to be getting worse for most of the country. Why do you think that is? And, what can we do about it?
Yeah, with a lot of questions, I don't know that there's a single answer. I wish there was, and I am by no means the person to come up with that answer. I think there are caveats to it. I think it's a shift maybe in genetics. I think there's a desire for Duroc sire genetics. There's nothing wrong with the Duroc. I just don't know maybe that it's as robust when it comes to handling PRRS virus. I'm sure as a podcast I listen to, they would have Brent stinks on Friday, so they can complain about what I just said when it comes to Durocs. But I think that's part of it. I think there's just disease pressure. I don't know that it's more or less than 10 years ago. It feels like it is. Like right now in Northwest Iowa, the crop's out, the wind's blowing, we're pumping pits, we're pumping lagoons. It's 60 degrees out today on the 16th of November, maybe it's 58. But it's warm, so curtains are down. There's a lot of viral load spreading around, whether or not it's being carried on a person or not. And we're in a hog dense area, and maybe even more dense now than it was 10 years ago. So maybe there's more ease of moving virus around on a person. And as biosecurity lacks, maybe it is in some spots. Some barns weren't designed 30 years ago worrying about PRRS coming in the barn and what we need to do from a Danish entry standpoint, biosecurity, things like that. So we work on those aspects every day. But we're also going into a time of year where, you're changing boots, getting out of a car, but you also don't want to slip and break your hip when you're walking on the snow. So there's also a safety aspect that we deal with in the wintertime in Northwest Iowa as well. So I'm kind of talking in a big circle here, meaning I don't have the exact answer for increased wean to finish mortality. I see it, I feel it. I think there are multiple aspects to it. And we're doing what little things we can every day to help reduce it as we move forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can remember back, you mentioned slipping on those boots in the ice. I did that more than once as a kid. Felt pretty embarrassed in front of a number of people doing that, but that can be a real hazard out there.
Don't worry, it happens to the best of us.
So you mentioned labor, you mentioned, even weather, things like wind picking up, maybe spreading some viral infections. Those are all tough things to battle. Let's transition now just a little bit into talking about RC Family Farms. RC is a company that prides itself on being caregiver focused, and you had mentioned a little bit, maybe it being unique to RC or unique to Northwest Iowa to still get to work with a lot of the farm owners and or building owners that are still taking care of the pigs. Can you tell us a little bit as a veterinarian what your interactions with those caregivers are like? How are you communicating with them? And what are you doing to make sure that they know, hey, when you're looking at these pigs and you take the time to report something, 10% of the pigs are coughing, there was a mortality today, whatever it may be. What are you doing to make sure that they know you're listening to them and to respond to those things?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to be there and you have to be present. And I by no means am a social media influencer or anything like that. But when I look at EveryPig, I want people to know that I'm here, or that our team is here, or that Dr. Schaefer is here. And so if there's any sort of question asked, I want to make sure we respond. If someone has a 10% cough and they didn't have a cough before, we may ask them a question. Hey, did this really just start in the last day? Is it only happening when they first get up in the morning? Do they continue to cough as they walk around the barn? And so we're trying to drive engagement with that person, because what I don't want, and I'll try not to get too far off track here, but I think sometimes labor in barns feel like they're isolated. They go out and do chores at 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. It's dark out in the winter. They're going to a full-time job. No one, they feel like no one checks in on them. Nothing, everything's fine until one little thing's wrong, and then somebody's chewing them out and they don't know why. And so I just want to be positive and proactive and have that two-way communication with that person, so that they know when they put something out there, we're going to respond. Now, am I going to respond at 5:31 if they put it in at 5:30? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the day, depends on what's happening in those situations. But, I was lucky enough working with you, Chris, where, EveryPig was built so that if anyone typed anything into the platform, it's going to show up on my screen. And so we know when someone's putting extra engagement into the platform that we can respond to that. And so to me, it's having that two-way communication, even though I'm not standing face to face. The other thing, selfishly for me, is having that conversation on EveryPig is so much faster, because we all know the client, the customer, however, a friend, that if you have to talk to them on the phone, it's going to be 45 minutes. I don't have the time to have 45-minute conversations, because you can't take care of enough pigs. And so I want that interaction done electronically, and I want it done on EveryPig versus in a text message versus another app or another program or whatever it might be, because I want my team to see that communication. I want the field person to see it. I want my boss to see it. I want my other veterinarian to see it. So we're all on the same page. We know what's going on. We know what each other are thinking, and we can have that engagement. I've even had people sometimes say, hey, can I stop by and look at a picture with you because I saw what you said about influenza on a lung? Yeah, stop by, or just put me on speakerphone. Let's look at the picture together. You don't need to come by office. I'll describe what I'm looking at. I'll give you landmarks based on where your hand is or your finger was, and I'll tell you what I'm looking at, and I can help explain that to you. Yeah, we can have that 5-minute phone conversation, because it's going to make you a better person, take care of the pigs. And so that's kind of an extreme example, but to me, it's, especially like on the weekends, it's like, hey, thanks for giving me the information. Thanks for putting that update in. Thanks for taking care of the pigs. When we have a tough PERS group, I just try to thank people. Thank you for going in and doing chores every day. Thank you for pulling those pigs. Thank you for gruel feeding that pole pen. Thank you for making sure the heat lamps are on. I've had people tell me it's corny that I do that. I'm okay with that. It's like, I want to do everything I can to encourage that person, especially in a difficult situation, to keep walking into the barn, keep taking care of the pigs, because that's hard on people when pigs are sick. It's just tough. So sometimes it's the psychology of supporting the person as best I can. And I do that through the platform because I don't have time to drive to the site to do it. Because if I drive there, there are 10 other sites I missed that I need to be dealing with. And so that's, once again, I went a little too far into the weeds there, Chris, but that's really driving engagement from my seat with that person as if I'm standing there with them.
Yeah, that's great. You touched on a lot of things that really resonate, I think, with probably our audience. You know, a lot of what you described was tighter communication loops, right? Psychology, the psychology of letting a caregiver know, hey, what you're doing matters and we see it, is as opposed to one of the things that really, I would say, was hard for me as working as a producer was a lot of times we'd look at a closeout report, right? So that could have been from pigs that have been gone to market 1, 2, 3, 6 months ago, and we'd see some mortality issues that happened months in the past, and then we'd have to call a caregiver and maybe have not such a great conversation with them. Sometimes maybe, you know, chewing them out a little bit about, hey, what happened? Why didn't you call us? And in fact, oftentimes they had called us or they had called someone in the company, but we maybe didn't respond properly, or we responded later than we should have. So it wasn't always on the caregiver. Some of that time it was on us. So yeah, that's something that's definitely near and dear to my heart. And also, you know, you touch on sort of the proactive versus reactive thing. In my experience, a lot of, and where we were at RC Family Farms, we were looking at mortality reports again of pigs that died months ago. Now you're talking about looking at symptomatic data the day a caregiver recognizes those symptoms being shown. Yep. And it seems to me the entire world has gone in this direction, right? Proactive versus reactive. There's no way that our industry doesn't go in the same direction. So really, really interesting to hear you say that, and happy to hear that the tool is working for you in that kind of way. So that's probably a good touch point to move on to, you know, the concept of telemedicine. I'd call you a pioneer in veterinary telemedicine. I know you being the humble guy, you probably wouldn't take it.
Correct.
But it's certainly true. I've been around long enough to know that. You know, you've worked with us at EveryPig as a user and a valued customer at RC Family Farms for over 5 years. We've always had a good rapport and a tight feedback loop with you. Hey, Dr. Carmichael, what are we doing that's working? What's not working? And what's next? Can you talk just a little bit more about, you know, how do you see telemedicine's role in your job now? And how do you see it impacting swine veterinarians in the future?
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say about telemedicine, and maybe it's just me, but I think too much tries to get lumped into telemedicine, and like, oh, we're trying to pull the veterinarian or the caretaker away from the animal. And that's not what this is. I mean, like what we just talked about earlier, and you did a better job of describing like closing a communication gap and things like that. To me, the telemedicine aspect is helping me get to the farm faster. I still need the caretaker going into the barn. I still need them checking the pigs every day. I need that feedback from them. The telemedicine part of the app is speeding up my response. They don't have to wait for me to do 4 other farm visits before I get there to get to them. Those 4 other farm visits, I did 10 minutes before talking to him because I did that through telemedicine, through the app. So to me, it's about speed and biosecurity. Biosecurity, I'm not dragging diseases around going site to site. I'm not wasting time behind the windshield. In our model, it works great because that's what we need to do. Telemedicine doesn't remove the animal caretaking. Telemedicine speeds up the response process. In a quick side story, we see a lot of different genetics. I know the genetics that are going to break with, I still say Haemophilus parasuis. Sorry to the microbiologists out there. I know it's Glasserella parasuis, but GPS means to me global positioning system. Sorry, I used to be in the ag equipment world. But I know pigs are going to break with Haemophilus parasuis. And if I have 2 dead, and I know that we either just transferred or just had a weather change or the curtains were down because it's naturally ventilated barn, those pigs have to be posted. I didn't snap very well there, but they have to be posted. I've got to see pictures. I've got to know, because we have to get very aggressive in treatment, because if we don't, tomorrow morning, I'm going to have 25, 30, 40. You pick the number and the size site, how many deads I'm going to have. Same way with E. coli. We've got to attack those right away. And I don't know unless the pigs are opened up. Sometimes I joke with some people, like, I appreciate you giving me the picture of the dead pig, but my ultrasound and x-ray vision isn't going to tell us why that thing died. I need you to cut it open. We can do it. It's okay. But the telemedicine is really what I would call encompassing the whole conversation. The tele part is just how are we communicating back and forth. The medicine's being done. It's just we're talking and we're doing it electronically and on pictures and videos versus standing face to face. So I think going forward, as we use that technology, it's about, for me, being efficient. It's about not spreading disease around. It's about being able to deal with a couple hot issues at the same time while managing, okay, who's going to go here to treat these? How are we going to fix these? You know, hopefully you don't have big outbreaks like that each time. But I know there are times I go out to sites because we have to follow up on something or check on something. I miss a lot in that drive time. And so it just makes us more efficient. I'm doubling up on a response here. But really, I think it's the way to go, technology wise, and the tools that are going to come in the next 5, 10 years. I don't know what they are, but I know they're going to be helpful, because 5 years ago, EveryPig wasn't there, you know, and I look at where we are today and I talk to our field staff, you know, they may complain that someone won't post a pig. I'll say, hey guys, remember 5 years ago when we were just starting and people wouldn't put a daily checkup in electronically? They'd only write it down on a sheet of paper. Think how far we come now. And if we can just keep that growth going exponentially, if I can fake drawing a graph here, I think it just gets better for us and for the pigs.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. I'm hearing really about not replacing, quite the opposite, empowering your caregivers, making them feel like a part of the team, educating them. That was one of my favorite things to see as we turned on EveryPig at RC Family Farms, was really just letting those caregivers know the work you're doing there is being seen and we appreciate it. And it seems like when they get a response from you or from a veterinarian, they're much more willing to do the work it takes to cut open a pig, save you a trip. And, you know, as we start to look at addressing the rural veterinary shortage, which we all know is here, it seems like it's time to rethink how many of these physical farm visits are necessary. And like you mentioned, what am I giving up when I'm driving out to these farms? What else am I missing on all the rest of my farms? What would you say, Dr. Carmichael, you know, to the veterinarians out there that are hesitant to start using telemedicine, if you hadn't covered that already? Is there anything that you know you could think of that might help them realize this is more of a tool than a threat?
Yeah, I realize that all veterinarians have different structures to how they practice their business model or whatever it might be. The first thing I thought of is, you know, I'm looking through my camera at a software expert, and that's Chris, and I'm not one of them, but I hear a lot about software as a service. And I don't necessarily know what that means, but what I know is, like, if I'm going to relate that to veterinary medicine, I have to somehow switch my mind and say, okay, how do I take what my brain power is here and engage it into software as a service to help my clients? How can I be of more service using software that makes me more efficient, to help my clients and to help my life and my time? You know, there are times, I'm sure there are a lot of people on the road all hours of the day. Do they need to be? Maybe, maybe not. I would argue that maybe less is more. And so I think it's about efficiency. It's about changing a mindset. And I can assure you, the first time you use EveryPig, you're going to have the first site with 10 dead. You're going to pop out of your chair and you're going to run to your truck and say, I got to go post them, because I did it as well. And Dr. Dave standing there saying, no, we need to train them how to post pigs. I know you want to go there, Brent. But we need to train them to post pigs, because there's going to be a day you won't have time to go see 5 sites. We need that help from them. And so we want to have them post the pig, get the picture, give us the information, and then use our brain to process information about what we're going to do without leaving the seat. And I realize that I may offend some people when I say that, or some people, they'll say my model doesn't work that way. I think you'll be surprised if you sit down, give it a shot, give it a little time. Just know I can't pop up every time I want to pop up and get in the truck and go. I've got to train them to give me the information. I'll process the information and I'll keep moving client to client to client to client without leaving my seat.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things in there. And, you know, there's the old saying, you know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You're not quite the old dog in the industry yet. Neither am I. We're getting closer every day, I think. But I know you've had some experience talking like with veterinary students at Iowa State, and you're in touch with that new generation of vets. Do you see them as being much more technology open and technology native, or how do you see kind of how the older vets in the industry versus the younger vets view things?
Ooh, I don't know if I have a good answer to that because I feel like I'm stuck in the middle.
Yeah,
As a Gen Xer, I see guys and gals have been in this industry forever using technology as if they're in their 20s. I I I don't want to put labels on anyone. So I'll come from the perspective of my kids, and my kids are a little extroverted, so maybe not fair, but I think there's going to be a generation of people that are used to the screen. I won't put my phone up, but they're used to interacting here. And I think that generation is going to have a harder time pulling away from the screen when they do need to talk face to face to have that
yeah.
communication. And I think it'll be polar opposite of what people that have been in this industry for 30 or 40 years are going through right now.
That's really interesting, right? It might be they might be more native to technology and have a harder time with that in-person conversation. So thanks for that. Another thing I wanted to mention about your earlier comments sounded like it really was around business model, right? In the olden days, 80s, 90s, maybe even somewhat today, I'm a little less connected to that side of the business. But when my dad started the Orange City Veterinary Clinic, you know, the revenue for him a lot of times was pretty dependent on how many physical sites he could get to, right?
Yeah.
So how fast can you drive a pickup truck on a gravel road is what it comes down to, versus, you know, how fast can you scroll, get the data you need, and make a decision and respond these days. And my guess is, and my experience as veterinarians using technology can cover 10 times as many farms a day or more, just by being pretty proactive on their screen. But the business model will be interesting. You mentioned the SaaS business model. I also see a day out there. I think you were kind of alluding to this, where some of these independent veterinary practices maybe have something that looks more like a recurring retainer with their larger customers, where in that retainer they have something built in about response time, and technology is helping to facilitate that, so they don't feel the pressure to drive, or in a lot of cases, a lot of these veterinarians are even flying out to see their customers, and they each need downtime between those visits. Well, you don't need any downtime. You can respond one to the next to the next. So it's interesting to see that change. You mentioned earlier, I think in the introduction, about working at John Deere, and you were kind of, you know, you were working with technology back then. Can you talk to us a little bit about your time at John Deere?
Yeah, so it was in the early 2000s. I lived in Columbus, Ohio. I got to travel the eastern part of the country. It was really interesting for an Iowa guy like me. I got to be in winter wheat country in Southwest Kentucky, Eastern Shore of Maryland. We did a sprayer training one time in Presque Isle, Maine, in potato country up there, and so it was very interesting for me. Also interesting, you could drive everyone out east knows this, but when you're from Northwest Iowa, like I could drive from Columbus, Ohio to the Eastern Shore of Maryland in 6 hours if I timed it right. But anyway, you know, you had guidance systems on tractor, and I'm on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, demonstrating a guidance system on a 9400 tractor and a soil finisher, showing this guy how to run it. It's old enough. The guy's on a flip phone. Like, okay, so he's talking on his cell phone, but it's the old flip phone with the T9 texting, all that stuff, like 2002 or something like that.
We just lost half our audience.
I know. It tells you how old I am. And so showing him how to, that's the first time I demonstrated to this farmer out in Maryland, and we're showing him how it works. And, you know, we'd go to training sessions and people were like, hey, I don't need to spend that kind of money. I can drive my own tractor. I don't need to spend $10, $15, $20,000, depending what they needed for equipment, add-ons, things like that. I can drive it myself, you know. And now you drive across probably anywhere in the country. Now, I've not been to California, Arizona, some of those areas, and they were using RTK systems, sub-inch accuracy back then. But if you drive across Iowa, you can pick out the fields where people are not using guidance. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would say it's less than 10% of the fields don't have some sort of guidance going across the field. So as you see that technology change and you experience the efficiency and you experience how much more productive you are during the day, or how your back doesn't hurt at the end of the day because I was actually facing forward versus turning back the whole time. Well, in the last 5 years, all the young guys are probably like, yeah, without guidance, I couldn't watch YouTube all day while I was sitting in the tractor, And so to me, the correlation there is technology is always evolving. I think the technology in livestock systems is going to be evolving. We see that happening right now. And that's where I come back a little bit to the software as a service. I think you'll also see pricing structures for different veterinary businesses, animal health management companies, whatever it might be. Some people might have a concierge service. Some people might, want to do so much per head, over time, or recurring monthly retainer, or a concierge service like you see for physicians in human medicine. There are so many nuances, and the guys that are in row crop using precision farming technology, they're going to be used to those conversations because they've been having that conversation for 20 years. One of the things I used to hear is, okay, I can run this yield mapping system and I know what my yield was, but now what do I do? I'm not sure, but let's collect more data. At least with EveryPig, here's my data. I had 10 pigs. Dead pigs? What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to cut them open, figure out what happened, and I'm going to fix it. I don't have to wait another year for another crop to see if I made any improvements. I can do that today. And so I think that's the immediate feedback loop for the technology in our industry is going to be amazing. I just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the timeline for the feedback loop is so small, so tight when you're working with live animals, right? And especially in Northwest Iowa, where you've got a very high pig density. RC's got some pretty unique aspects about it as well on the procurement side, right? So you've got pigs coming in from all sorts of sow units all over the US and Canada and coming into a pig dense area. So putting out disease and pig health challenges quickly is kind of an everyday thing for you, I would imagine.
Yes.
Let's see. What haven't we covered here so far today, Dr. Carmichael? We talked a lot about, the importance of response time. Can you give us some examples in your everyday life where you really feel like you need to respond fast? And if you had to go back to the old ways, how challenged would you be? Say tomorrow, you had to go back to paper barn sheets. Maybe you don't even remember much of that because I think you started on EveryPig right when you started. But could you imagine a day when you had to go back to paper record keeping and what would your day-to-day look like in that scenario?
That's a crazy question because I don't know if I can answer it. And I've talked to people at professional meetings about this. They'll say, how has it been for you? And I'll be like, I've grown with the technology. Like when I started here, day one, EveryPig was up. I should have taken pictures of it. I mean, it's not bad, but the amount of changes that you have done is amazing compared to the first few days when we started. And so I've been here the whole time. And I've told veterinary students this. I don't know how to practice any other way because I was lucky enough that I didn't have to wait for the barn sheet. I didn't have to say, I know this site has a history of E. coli. I probably should check on it later today. And then you don't do it today because 5 other fires come up and you remember tomorrow. Oh yeah, maybe I should check tomorrow. Yeah, I'll check it tomorrow afternoon. And you finally get there and you realize they've had 60 dead pigs over 2 days and no one called you. Now, I'm not saying that still happens today. It probably can. Sometimes caretakers don't want to tell you have that many dead pigs because they feel like they failed or they did something wrong or they don't, maybe nothing will happen if they don't know about it. Or if it gets 6 months down the road, then they can't fire me because we're already on the 3rd group since then. Who knows what goes on in the mind of people in some of those situations. So it would be really hard because we get so much information electronically today. That's what I'm used to.
And how would, I don't mean to cut you off there, but I'm curious, even in, you'll see some high health flows where people might say, oh, these pigs, they grow on their own. But there are some challenges and unique threats that happen when say you're bringing in some PRRS negative pigs or what's known as high health pigs into a pig dense area, maybe not even a pig dense area. But can you talk about that? What would you say to those people that say, well, we got healthy pigs, it doesn't matter?
Good luck, because it will matter. You don't know if it's going to be an issue today, tomorrow, next week, next month. You may go 3 turns and there's no issue. But on the 4th turn, you get your hind end kicked 1 week because you weren't paying attention. Also, you get 25% death loss. So you just never know when that's going to happen. You know, I correlate it to, I had a job where we did center pivot irrigation for crop farming. Once you turn those things on, it's like raising pigs. Like, you have GPS monitors, you can look at them, but the minute you drive away, if that thing stops running, you don't know unless an alarm comes at you or you check it again the next day. So you have to be there all the time and be engaged. And I'm not saying you got to live in the barn, but you have to be in a routine and check those pigs and check them twice a day and keep an eye on them. Unfortunately, I've seen examples where people have technology, have used it, but haven't walked in the barn, and you walk into 100 dead pigs from parasuis. Well, this is no shot at AP. They make a great edge product. They were checking their AP edge controller. Everything was good. Health was supposed to be good. High health pigs. One of the issues with high health pigs, you get a little stressor, they break with parasuis. Boom, you got a train wreck. I think what happened in this case, if I remember correctly, one inlet got out of whack, stayed open instead of coming down. In the middle of December, you chill a bunch of high health pigs, they break with parasuis, spreads like wildfire. You don't check the barn for a couple days, you got a bad day. That doesn't happen a ton, thank goodness, but we're human and we're not perfect. And so that's why you still got to be in the barn every day, checking them on a regular cycle to know what's going on. And I think I trailed away from the topic a little too far.
No, not at all. What I'm hearing out of all that is it's people and technology. It's not one or the other, because technology is only as good as it can be being used, right? And it seems like a lot of these monitoring solutions are going to continue to move in that direction of being able to monitor remotely. But I don't know if you do, in the near future, again, caregivers or veterinarians being replaced by anything. It's who's going to use these tools to do a better job and be more effective.
I think how the tools are used is where probably competitive advantages can be made. To me, some of these tools are about triage. Okay, where are my issues? That's where my human capital goes. Not to say it in a matrix type way here, but like really that's what it's about. Where are the issues? Where do I deploy my human capital as quickly and as fastly as possible to fix those, and then figure out where to go next from there. Maybe that happens 10 years from now. Maybe it happens 2 years from now. You know, there's a lot of robots, cameras, things like that. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm sure even the dairy industry said we never have robotic milkers, but I think they're out there.
Self-driving tractors, robotic milkers. Yeah. And they say agriculture is the least digitized industry in the world. So I think you're going to see a lot of change ahead in the next 10, 15 years in ag. And it'll be really interesting to see what AI does, not artificial insemination as much as artificial intelligence, really starting to have more and more applications. Well, I know you're a busy guy. Really appreciate the time today. Could you leave us on a positive note? What do you see that's positive in the industry in the future? And what do swine vets have to look forward to?
Yeah, I think that my initial reaction to that is we produce things that people love. Who doesn't love bacon? Who doesn't love pulled pork? A nice pork rib, you know, loin off the smoker, Easter ham. We produce things people love. And so that's great. Positive energy can feed the world. And that's always there. Are we going to have highs and lows? Yes, we will. We always have. Ag is just that way. But there are positive things to look forward to. There are positive people coming into the industry that didn't grow up on a farm. I mean, I grew up on an acre. It's not technically a farm, but as we get fewer and fewer people in the country, there's going to be less and less farm kids. That's not necessarily bad. Sometimes it's nice to not come in with preconceived notions of how I should take care of pigs. bring someone that's energetic, teach them the process we want them to use, and then move forward. And so there are people that want to work with livestock, that want to be in agriculture, maybe not as many, but to me, the interesting thing is going to be how we take the technology, how we tie it together with human capital, and how we move forward. And I don't think the term is telemedicine. There's some other technology term I think that will come up and describe that, but I think that's going to be the interesting thing going forward, is taking our technology set, improving it, growing it, and then how we triage as the human capital and keep the pigs healthy.
I couldn't agree more. That was really well said. And certainly the diversity that's coming into the industry today, especially in the United States, it looks much different than it ever did before. And I think that can really lead to a lot of people approaching the industry from a first principles basis, instead of, having routines that they've seen from their dad and their grandfather. Not that that's all bad, but it's good to get some fresh faces and some open minds coming into the industry as well. And you're certainly one of those. So want to wrap up now, but Dr. Carmichael, really appreciate the time today. And it's been great to talk to you as always. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. Glad you had me on today. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.